Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here. I'm with Jason Drew. We are we're not in Anderson Valley, but we're near Anderson Valley. We're actually up on the Mendocino Ridge. And Jason, thanks for having me over. This is awesome. So, how many miles are we from the ocean going that way?
As the crow flies, we are 3 miles.
3 miles.
From the western perimeter of the property, and then it goes in a little bit as you go east, of course.
So you guys can start to hear this wind kind of behind us. We're right here, right around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it just kind of starts now and kind of goes pretty much all the rest of the day. Yeah. Fog will come in. We're above the fog line. Yeah.
So the Mendocino Ridge has a nickname, Islands in the Sky, which is trademarked by Dan Dooling.
Yep. The great
and
Dan Dooling.
It's called, of course, it's called Islands in the Sky for a reason, and that's because a lot of the time when the fog rolls in, well, first of all, you have to be at 1,200 feet or above to be in the Mendocino Ridge appellation, which incidentally is, still to my knowledge, is the only non-contiguous AVA in the United States. So basically at 1,200 feet, you're a lot of the times above the fog line. And so if you look to the south there, there's this canyon, it's called Greenwood Canyon or Greenwood Creek that runs down, and the fog just kind of meanders up from the coastline. A lot of times it's like 800 feet, sometimes 900 feet, but right in that zone. And so you have pockets in the appellation that are above that, and they look like little islands in the sky. And so, but a third of the time, I would say there's fog that just totally encompasses us. And the other neat part about being this close to the ocean and at this elevation, of course we get the slopes, but we have very cool conditions even without the fog, and so right now it's probably 72 degrees or something like that, where you go inland and it gets a little bit warmer, and so
it's supposed to be 100 degrees in Boonville today, and we're not at 100 degrees here by any means. We're just close to the ocean. So Jason and I got to know each other a long time ago. We're talking about 20 years ago, where we met at Babcock Winery down in Santa Rita Hills, Central Coast, and Santa Ynez Valley, Santa Barbara County. And I'll never forget how we did it. Where Brian Babcock, I was talking to him, and I said, "Well, that's great. I like this. I like this sample that's coming out of this barrel. But hey, can you get a full bottle of this stuff so we can taste like what a finished one in this?" And the minute he left the room, Jason said, "Hey, you want to taste my wine?" And like,
okay, you're gonna have to cut that. That was a great time.
That was funny.
I also want to give credit to Brian too, in all seriousness, because he was basically one of my mentors in the industry. Just brilliant winemaking, and I think that he doesn't get enough credit for really being in that area when it was really up and coming and just in a formidable time in the industry, and so he was out just scouring different vineyards and all kinds of soils and
amazing
climates.
He taught us all a lot, and he still does. I mean, I just saw him, he was doing something recently, but no, that's where you said, hey, you know what, I'm gonna come up your way at some point here. And that's really what it was about. Is like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll see you up here. Guess what he did? And he's an amazing winemaker. And here we are on his property, him and Molly and the kids. This is really something. So, how many acres do you have planted for just grapes? Like, we'll talk about the apples in a minute.
Yeah, well, the property is 26 acres, and we have 5.5 acres of Pinot Noir, 8 different clonal selections / California heritage, and then there's 2.5 acres of Chardonnay. And next year I'm actually going to be, which we looked at, there's going to be a couple more acres that I'm going to put in, which I'm going to be working with some Chenin Blanc and some Gamay and a tiny bit of Cabernet Franc.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
That's cool. So we got a great wine right in front of us right now. So this is the Faîte de Mer. Really cool one, just named after this property, and it's the name of the estate now, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So obviously we are super close to the ocean, and you know, this is really above the fog line, you know, the islands in the sky. And it's got a really actually a cool picture of the estate right there. And this building right here is actually what's right around us on this side. So here we are. So this is a really unique one. So tell us a little bit about the, you know, you've got different clones in here that are planted in different spots here. What is the composition of this?
So it's 100% Pinot Noir, and it includes, it's sort of what I wanted to do. The concept was to create a stamp of the, you know, the whole, all of the blocks, or most of the blocks.
Yep.
So there's many different blocks that go into this, and you know, I think the idea was to express the soils, express the climate, and I think we got pretty close. I mean, you feel like, you know, you're within, you know, you smell it, and you can sense the conifers, or the conifers.
You really
and the
can.
ocean.
It really does have that woodsy, but it's not wood from the oak. It's more like you're in the forest, and we're surrounded by it. I mean, you guys can see, you can't really see that visually because the way the sun is going here, but we wanted you to kind of feel what it's like here, just in the angle. But that's out there. It's a higher ridge that way, and that's just all conifers out there. That's just a forest up there. So we're surrounded all the way around here too, and all the way down to the creek bed is all forest. And it took me a while to get here. What was that? 20 minutes out of.
From Anderson Valley, right off, you pull off the 128. It's about 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's about 20 minutes if you know the road pretty well. I was driving safe though.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, incidentally, it's interesting because we're actually the furthest west than any other vineyard at this point.
Yeah.
And
furthest west and north. Yeah, for the
Appellation, definitely. And so myself and Molly, my wife, when we first came up here, there wasn't a whole lot to you know, go on in terms of track records of, you know, how vines are going to perform, and so it was, you know, a bit of a I wouldn't say it was a risky move, but we didn't know exactly what we were going to be getting in terms of, you know, fruit and wine quality. I did, you know, I felt pretty confident that we were going to be getting, you know, a lot of structure, a lot of intensity, small berries, you know, really, really good acidity, and we have all those things, which is great because I'm kind of a structure guy. I love to chew on wine and have that texture, especially early on in the wine's life. So it has those bones. But anyways, there's a lot of people that were, you know, giving us pushback, saying, "What are you doing? You're not going to be able to ripen out there. You know, it's too close to the ocean. Nobody's over there." It's like, "What are you doing? You're crazy." And so I kind of just put the blinders on and just kept my head down and felt like, okay, well, you know what? I have never worked with Pinot Noir in California, and I've worked with a lot of different Pinot Noirs that I haven't been able to get ripe. And so I kept that in the back of my head going, you know, I kept on, you know, listening to that inner voice, and then just which helped propel me and make the move. And I'm really
well, I mean, you look at Sonoma Coast, and especially the Fort Ross Sea View. I mean, it's in a kind of a similar situation. You're definitely more north than them, and you're, you know, if you guys saw the thing that I did on Murder Ridge and Steve's place, it's a number of miles that way from us, but he's up above it. And you know, my point here is that you think about Russian River Valley, and one thing that they have that is very unique about them, they really have, and it's valley floor more than it is here, but they grow Zinfandel there, and Zinfandel works there, and so does Pinot, and this is one area that Zinfandel and Pinot work too, and it's because it's above the fog line that it does work.
Right. Now, one exception, I'd question whether Zinfandel would work.
We're this far
close
north.
to the ocean.
This far north and close to the ocean. But it works on these ridges if you're in the right place. And these are all little microclimates, and you have to figure that in. And Steve's place is definitely a number of miles that way. What would you say, like 10 maybe?
Well, from where we are, it might be 10. I think it's like 11 miles in from the coastline, and about 2,000 feet up. So he's got some, really nice steep elevation to work with as well.
Crazy place to go, you guys.
Yeah. We are right at around 1250.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great here. So, great wine. I'm loving this. I really get the earth kind of tone, but it's not earthy. It's more about the forest. And, this for me is a great one. Like I want a lot of things with this. What I thought about right off the bat, too, was, definitely pork, but like almost like mushu pork and things like that. Would be really interesting, especially if it's got a little funk on it.
Right.
And I like mushrooms a lot. And I think that obviously Mendocino County is a really big mushroom place. You'll find that out with the Navarro one that I did with Jim. And you, speaking of which, that's kind of one of your first stomping grounds was Navarro, right down there on the valley floor.
Yeah, that was way back in 1996. So I had worked with Jim closely, and the Bennetts as well. Wonderful people.
Yeah.
And really, I think that was the experience that kind of got me hooked on, Anderson Valley, Mendocino Coast, because the wines were just, they were fragrant, they were fresh, they were
so amazing.
Red, foresty, minerality, a little bit of floral kick too. But I think for me, Anderson Valley, it has this tendency to give just a lighter foresty fruit. You can lose that. You can lose that if you wait too long and it turns into more darker, sort of like overripe plums. And then the tannins start to crumble. And you lose that vivacity. But I think that's what Anderson Valley, that's what it's about. And that's where it sings the most to me anyways. And so I decided, when it was time to look for property up here with my wife, we decided, okay, well, let's do this. Let's go up to the coast. Let's check out Anderson Valley. And so we looked all around Anderson Valley and the Mendocino Ridge, and this is the first spot we came to.
So this is the next one, you guys. So we're going to get into this. This is the estate Midslope. So tell everyone just a little bit, too, about, before we go into this, how many acres of apples do you have here?
Okay. Well, good question, because it's changing all the time. Right now we have 11 acres of apples, and I think that's. I think we're gonna stay right there and keep. We might carve out another acre for some other grapes, but I feel that I can farm this property, manage it fairly well. With the 11 acres of apples and the what's going to be 10 acres of vineyard, and it's just to Molly and myself, the apples are just they're beautiful. They have this intrinsic beauty, and they change throughout the year. When they're blossoming, it's just an amazing place to be.
Yeah, and especially here on Mountainside. I mean, for those of you that know Gravenstein Grill, where I'm a partner in there, and it's in Sebastopol, the great town of Sebastopol. But it's not up here at 1,200 feet. So you do have Gravenstein apples, and what are some of the other ones that you have?
So we have Gravensteins. We have what's considered Rhode Island Greenings, which some people refer to them as spitters, because the old timers call them spitters because they're just so tannic and acidic you can't swallow them. You just gotta chew them and spit them out. Which is great for cider. And then there's the Rome Beauties, so I'll use a little bit of those in our cider program, and it just really lifts the aromatics quite nicely. So the Gravensteins, and then there's also Philo Golds, which, from what I'm told, maybe it's folklore, but it comes from Philo, and they're sort of a mutation of Golden Delicious. Wow! And so those are they're right there, and they just taste like candy, and yes. Oh, and then there's some Jonathans as well.
Yeah, the Jonathans,
so, are really special.
Yeah. Well, you opened this bottle a little. We did a little while ago, and we just took a little baby sip of it. And to be really honest, it's changing like a lot. I mean, just in a few minutes, just before we went on the air here. You know, here we go into this. You know, this is an amazing wine. And it's opening up. It's a really complex wine. Tell everyone a little bit about this. And you were saying you're in love with this wine right now. This is a 2018, right?
This is a 2018, the Faîte de Mer Farm, 2019.
Right.
So I make the wines a little bit differently. So for instance, the Midslope was 19 months in barrel. I used 20% New French oak, 85% whole cluster, and everything is foot stomp / hand punch down about once a day, and everything is also fermented with native yeast. But to me, okay, so this is called Midslope because we have a section of the vineyard on the east side of the winery that's on a midslope, and so you have where that 943 block is, and we have the Calera over there, and then there's another block, just another, I don't know, let's see, maybe 100 yards or so, that has some Swan. It's also on what we would consider midslope. And so I put those three together with some Pomard as well. Sorry, so there's four selections in there. And to me, they're you know, just really, it's like another notch up. It has this sort of an umami thing going on right now that I'm loving, and you know, I'm just really excited about this wine. It's one of the first wines that I made and held in barrel for 19 months. And I think, you know, just stretching that out, stretching the fruit out a little bit, stretching the tannins out a little bit, it gives it a little bit more of an ethereal kind of feel. And it's really, to me, again, going back to what we were talking about with structure and having the small berries and, you know, the really great acidity and the tannin, you know, some of the blocks here I think require 18 months in barrel just to really fill things out and you know, expand the bandwidth, if you will, and just it's a little bit more of a sophisticated feel, I think.
No, it's fantastic stuff, and I think this wine is tasting great. I mean, it's got a lot of tension in it right now because, you know, it's one of those ones that you can drink it now, and you definitely want to let it open up a little bit. I mean, to really start it going in the direction you want. I mean, you could be just sitting down to have dinner. You kind of need to actually pre-plan that. But if you're sitting there watching a movie, on the other hand, you've got an hour and a half to let this baby really open up. It's going to be magic inside your mouth.
And I think day 2 and day 3 as well.
And that's what great wines are about. They're not just about one-dimensional, and they're not anything. It's about how they open up, you know, once you, and why are they age-worthy, is that's an interesting thing that you can learn about it by just watching a movie with these wines, you know?
Right. And I think you nailed it. This wine will age very gracefully and for quite a long time. So I'm excited to watch it, you know, progress and evolve as well.
Me too.
So it's gonna be good.
You know, the last time I was up here was with the Psalm Journal and the great Randy Caparoso. We are talking about you, Randy Caparoso, you guy. But, you know, great friend of ours, and, you know, he really wanted all of us sommeliers to come up here, and with good reason. It's a really interesting spot. I mean, you just don't drive up here on, you know. He's got a great tasting room, by the way, you guys, in the Madrone down and right between Boonville and Philo.
9,000 Highway 128.
9,000. Yeah, and drewwines.com. Don't forget that. You can find out a lot about him and Molly and the whole thing here too. So don't forget about that. But, you know, I thought it was so interesting to have a lot of people that weren't used to Mendocino Ridge coming up here. A lot of them have probably never been back since, but they got a feel about these hills and how everything works up here. These are different. You're here on the ridge, but like we said, the mid-slope, you're looking different directions even there because they're not straight. There's nothing about this. It's normal.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's one of the things that excited me about this property, because you have these different slopes and aspects and this sort of this undulation. I mean, it's, you know, you go from west to east, and like you have three sort of, it's almost like an ocean swell that comes through, which, you know, it's sort of ironic because these soils are the ocean bottom uplift soils, and so they're fairly marginal in fertility. Some of the blocks are deeper than others. Some have topsoil that's shallower than others. We have a varying degree of clay especially on the lower slopes. Might have a little bit more clay. So there's a lot of diversity in the soils. There's also high iron, lots of quartzite, but essentially it's sort of variations of decomposed sandstone, which, as you know, is not very fertile, but it's great for the vine's roots to get down deep into like the minerals and the
retain water too.
And retain water. Everything's organic here, and I'm doing a lot of dry farming. The majority of the vineyard is dry farmed, even this year. And the vines we walked around, and
they looks good. I mean, they look really healthy. Obviously the yields are naturally controlled this year. I mean, by just lack of rain. I mean, you do drop fruit. I mean, and you do all those things. Did you drop much?
I have. You
haven't really done it?
Dropped any fruit this year. Last year I did. We had a little longer vintage last year, but this year it's really amazing. Just to look at the vineyards and the vineyard blocks and see how they're responding, because they're really a reflection of the site, the soils, the little microclimates, but most of the vineyard blocks they're behaving differently now because of the lower rainfall, and you can see this sort of like intentional slower progression, but a sustained level of growth, but it's just slower. I think there's certainly less vigor this year, and it's because the vines are they're figuring things out on their own, and that's what I wanted to do, and that's part of the intention with dry farming and organic farming. We're certified organic. That I think you're promoting those vines to last longer, be more sustainable, be more expressive. The roots are going to go down deeper and pull up the minerals in the water when they need it.
Absolutely.
And they're going to be down there to do it when there's little rainfall, and a low rainfall season. So with drought conditions, they can still do okay.
Pretty amazing.
I think it's going to be a really, really exciting vintage.
We got a field blend here, the field blend, in fact, and this is a GSM red blend. So here we go into Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. 3 amazing grape varieties, and I've always loved the fact that a lot of people are great Pinot makers, and they usually do Pinot and they do Chard, and this is kind of it. You've been fascinated by Syrah, just like me, for a long time, and this is really more of a Syrah based one, but you've got Grenache and you've got Mourvedre in here too. But I really, I've been fascinated by your Syrahs. I mean, what got you so into the Rhones?
Well, I went to school in Australia. I think that's what kicked it off.
Okay, that'll
so that was 97, 98.
Shiraz.
Uni of Adelaide, and just tasted some really, really provocative Syrahs in the Barossa and the Clare Valley and Clarenvale, and so that's what got it kicked off. And when I came back here, I did an internship with Joseph Phelps, and then worked a little bit with John Consgard. And so expanding
your
that,
Chardonnay too. The guy makes great Chardonnay.
Did some Chardonnay there.
Yeah, Consgard.
But
big time.
Chardonnay came later in our portfolio. Syrah was like there day one. Down in Santa Rita Hills. And, so I was playing some Syrah from Paso Robles as well. And but to me, it's like it just has that really neat sex appeal. It's like sultry. It's wild. There's some game to it.
There definitely is
big bandwidth. You can make it in many different styles, as you know. I prefer just that northern Rhone, older school kind of feel. And so I started making Syrah 20 years ago, and I was not doing a lot of whole cluster fermentation with it. I was using inoculated yeast, and since then I've been studied the Northern Rhone wines. I've been back there a couple of times and met with some formidable, just world-class producers. I think one thing that got me excited about doing a blend was going there and tasting with like Jamet, Jean-Paul Jamet, and he's all about the blending components, and there's that. But there's also single vineyard
Yeah.
Syrahs as well that are just as exciting to me. A different concept, totally different concept. And I think one could argue that maybe single vineyards, there's less of the human element that goes into it, where
Yeah.
You're doing all this blends and building a very complex, really just an amazing cuvee. But that has a little bit more of the person, involved with it. So again, different concept. But I love them.
I mean, I think that this is a unique one just off the bat. I mean, it's got a lot of mountain fruit kind of character, but it's also pretty peppery. It's very savory. Makes me want duck right off the bat. I mean, it's almost even Peking duck and even variations of that. That would be kind of fun to like do a whole bunch of different Peking ducks and see which one matches the best.
Seeing the little Asian theme.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the Asian thing. Maybe I need some. Maybe I need some Asian food. But
you're not too far away.
Yeah,
You're gonna get some of that
exactly.
for your lunch, I think.
Yeah, I'm going out to Elk, you guys, and I'm not eating elk. I'm eating at the Harbor House Inn, which
Thumbs up.
Michelin starred, great place, and I'll be there this afternoon having lunch there. I'll definitely tell you about that later in a different thing. But I think that this kind of thing, I mean, obviously lamb comes to mind, and I think that you could do a really nice roasted lamb, but I could do it off the barbecue too, and I could have a really good time, especially with this. You did almost like a more of a kind of a Turkish style kind of one where you have those kinds of spices in there that are like cardamom almost.
Interesting.
And you really could do that and just make like your little sandwiches with it, and just do it on the grill, just kind of skew it and you just like, I just, it makes me want food, and that's why, is it complex? Oh, hell yeah. It's way complex. Is it going to get even crazier in a few minutes? Yeah. But like I was saying earlier too, I really like the Mourvedre in here. Just what's the percentage do you think in this one?
Very small percentage.
Yeah.
I think it's like
Amazing.
4% Mourvedre.
You can make
but
a
it goes
difference.
a very long ways. Yeah. And that's why I love it. So I had so this is actually a blend of two vineyards, Valenti Vineyard and Pearly Vineyard, both Mendocino Ridge. And then the Valenti component has field selection, quote, Chave, that I had budded over in 2015, I think it was. But I had also interplanted Grenache and Mourvedre in that Syrah block, which is really interesting because when the Syrah gets ripe, as you know, it usually ripens before Grenache and Mourvedre. So I'll go in and I'll pick the Valenti Syrah, the Chave Syrah, and the Grenache will just be these really tight pink, it's just super bright, candied kind of flavor, but also just a little bit peppery as well, spicy, and that might be where we're getting some of the spice.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like
the Mourvedre, certainly.
It's almost black, but then there's some white pepper in it too. Yeah. It's got both of them, and I'm really digging on this. I mean, we're gonna have to talk about this later after it opens up a little bit more. But hey, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to just be you and I up here on this mountain alone and having some fun again. I sure appreciate this guy. He's a great winemaker, Drew Wines, and we have a lot of fun together. But we care about wines, and we care about Pinot, we care about Syrah, we care about Chardonnay, we care about Chenin, baby. We care about Gamay, we care about Cabernet Franc. Follow this man. You still make that Albarino?
I still make the Albarino. Yes, I do.
Doggy. Albarino is a killer.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's got a little thing on the front. It's kind of the clone or something that you got, right?
Well, it's actually the image. I think what you're referring to on the label is it's a suitcase with an arm and a hand carrying it, and which is sort of a tongue-in-cheek kind of way of saying it's from Rias Baixas. It's a suitcase selection.
It's a suitcase selection from the area of Spain, which is just above Portugal, the Rias Baixas. Amazing area. Oh my God.
Yeah, lots of salty, just minerally,
saline kind of. I mean, all you do there is eat a ton of seafood, and those razor clams. Oh my God, they're about this big and they're amazing. But speaking of which, going out to the ocean right now here in Mendocino County. Please come visit Mendocino County. Visit his great tasting room, which is right down on your way between Boonville and Philo. It's very easy to get to. It's right, actually, you guys know Goldeneye. It's like right past Goldeneye on your left. It's right there. You've got so many great opportunities up here on the ridge. Not as accessible. It's accessible, but you're not going to find anything up here unless you know these people.
So Molly, my wife, works in the tasting room, and she's just terrific. She's just a beautiful person, and she explains everything. It's just like the back of her hand. I mean, she just is very knowledgeable with the area up here. So we are open Friday through Sunday, 11 to 5. And if you could call and make an appointment, that would be great, because we get booked up, and she's doing by appointment only right now.
Yeah, Molly's amazing, and it's kind of funny because I wrote you and I said, hey, I'm coming up. Can you put can we have some quality time? And I was thinking up here, but just in case, I wrote Molly too. I'm saying, hey, I could come to the because we stayed at Indian Creek, right behind it. I was right behind it.
Yeah, that's a great place to stay too.
Yeah,
so,
it's really cool.
Smack in the middle of Anderson Valley.
Actually, if you're staying here, good recommendation right there. You call, and Kevin's going to answer the phone every single time. The guy owns the place. He's very proud of it, and you know what? We stayed there the past few nights. Amazing. So, thanks once again for tuning in to the Varietal Show, and thanks once again for having me. These Drew wines rock.
Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
See you, everybody.
Cheerios.
Bye-bye.